Great. All right. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Digital Diasporas, Sala-Manca and the Museum of the Contemporary, the first event in our new Artist Talk series, Digital Diasporas. My name is Emily. I'm the exhibitions coordinator at the Museum of Jewish Montreal. For those of you who don't know the Museum of Jewish Montreal is an innovative place to connect with Montreal's Jewish life and identity, to share a diverse heritage, and to create new cultural experiences. So before we begin, I'll just let my colleagues, Pippa and Alyssa, introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Alyssa, and I'm the Artistic Director at the Museum of Jewish Montreal. And I'm going to be your chat moderator and monitor for today. So if you happen to have questions for Lea and Diego as we go along, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I will make sure that your questions get asked and answered.
And hi, everybody. I'm Pippa. I'm going to be recording this session so we can all watch it later. And if you're having any technical difficulties, you can send me a message and let me know.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. So the Museum of Jewish Montreal is thrilled to present our new series, Digital Diasporas, where once a month we'll be featuring selected artists as they take us through their practice prior to the pandemic, their innovations in response to social distancing, and their visions for the future. So today we're so lucky to be joined by Sala-Manca's Lea Mauas, the General and Artistic Director of Mamuta Art Research Centre, and Diego Rotman, the head of the Department of Theater Studies at the Hebrew University. The Sala-Manca Group has been active in Jerusalem since 2000, pursuing creative work in a wide range of fields, including performance, video, poetry, and public art. Sala-Manca's work deals with poetics of translation, with textual, urban, and net contexts, and with the tensions between low-tech and high-tech aesthetics, as well as social and political issues. So over the years, Lea and Diego have worked with over 500 artists, curators, filmmakers, poets, and architects in Israel and abroad on their various projects, some of which include the Museum of the Contemporary and Something is Rotten in the State of Denmark, which they will speak to more today. So I want to welcome Lea and Diego. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and I will let you take it away from here.
You.
So first of all, thank you for inviting us. We are very happy to be here with you. Thank you to Pippa, to Alyssa, and to Emily for this opportunity to share our work with you, everybody who is present here.
Yeah, the same. I'm very happy. We discovered a Zoom effect that when one talks, goes to the computer, and the other one goes a little bit back.
So we are trying that today.
That effect is actually our challenge today. So we thought that we would like actually to share, in order to contextualize our approach to this specific situation, actually to deal with the way that we were working for many years, actually reacting to the space, the location where we were based, and to the specific times when we were working in the different times and places here in Jerusalem. So we start actually with a quote by Juan Mestre. The quote is, as in Pascal's universe, the center is everywhere and the circumference nowhere. And it's written by Juan Mestre, anarchist and compass maker. We think that in a way synthesized our approach to the arts and to the place.
Absolutely. When we started working in Jerusalem, first of all, we are from Buenos Aires, from Argentina, and we came here when we were in our 20s, more or less, without knowing exactly the art scene. And we felt that we want to, like, that every place can be a kind of center. So trying to challenge this idea of periphery and center, and trying to generate a community or a network of people working together that can relate to the surroundings, and also to generate collaborations. And that's what we've started to do along with our artistic practice, is to create different platforms along the years.
The only thing that I would like to add is that actually you are based in Jerusalem, and that's a very important point because what is considered the center of the Israeli art scene is actually Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem is considered in a way like in the margins, but we actually we see a totally different approach, and we find, of course, the place where we are as the ultimate center. So we just we tell some words about our first projects.
Yes, so the first platforms that we've created were different art journals that for us was very important, that will be like kind of artist book, even that were art journals, and to not to have advertisements inside, and to have a very special design, and we've done them without any external economic support, and along each issue that we published, we organized a very quite big contemporary art event in different historical locations in Jerusalem, and dealing with the location in particular, and with also with the political and social connotations of the place and implications.
So we started all our projects actually during the second Intifada here in Israel, and just to understand how the context actually enters the situation, the day of the first event in 2001, where we published the new issue of our journal, actually a couple of hours before the opening of the event, there was an attack, a bomb attack, 100 meters from the place of the event, and there was a big discussion with the artists if to do the event or not. It was a time when most of the places here in Jerusalem were closed. People were very afraid to go outside, and was a little bit dangerous. But we thought that actually art is it's the platform to create a possibility of meeting, to have an alternative discourse to the one that we were hearing at that time through the media, and to try to create alternative ways of communication, of creation, of community. And so we did the event, and was actually the beginning of a series of 10, 11 events where these 400 artists were taking part. And you are actually seeing this event on the map of Jerusalem, that one of the artists actually say that it looks exactly like the map with the bomb attacks in Jerusalem. So he compared these art events like the attacks, and talking about how these performative and one-time events were strong and disappeared the day after.
Yeah, that they were kind of art attacks, but also like we're trying to really to challenge the dichotomy of the discourse that was in the media, as Diego said, and trying to offer another kind of discourse, and also of gathering and creating. So that was for 7 years, as Diego said, and after that. Yeah, you wanted to say.
No, I just wanted to add that those were events organized without any support, in total alternative way, actually rejecting support, and it was all the incomes we had from selling the journal were devoted to publish a new issue of the journal, and to support some cost of the next event.
So another platform, that platform of the art journal and the events were for about 7 years. Another platform we did was the New Media Header, and you can see the computers that was in, I think, 2002 and 2003, that we were organizing in our house in the neighborhood of Nachlaot, different workshops of that time we call that new media, and also like Maxim SP or different things, and people were coming. It was quite with their desktop even to our house, you can see here, and doing these workshops, and also was a kind of trying to generate the platform for sharing knowledge, and to again to have an alternative way of studying and of creating art.
So in a way, I think that we would like to stress here is that actually we approach also our private space as a public space where people can enter, can approach, and can meet. That was the same approach that we had with those art events, entering sometimes spaces that are not public or are semi-public, but opening for those events to create these moments of autonomous zone or autonomous art zones. So we go, that was in the period between 2000 and 2007, 8. And after that, actually, we enter to a house in Ankara.
Yeah, what happened is that we felt that all the artists taking part in the events were leaving the city, and we wanted to create a platform where artists can work on a daily basis and have this kind of like different labs, like a sound lab or a wood workshop or a video lab where they can create on studios. And for the first time, we approached 4 foundations and asked for support to do this project. We just wrote a paper and just did that, and we got the support to do that because people knew our work for 7 years. So we created the Mamuta Art and Media Center.
That it's when we approach one of the foundations, they offered the house that you are seeing in the screen. It's a very beautiful and big house in Ankara. And Ankara, it's a complex location in Jerusalem because it's a former Palestinian village that it was actually kept quite well and without a lot of change, but with a Jewish population on it. So there were a lot of political issues that were related to that decision to go and work there. Today it's a neighborhood in Jerusalem, but it has a lot of connotations. And one of the main projects being there was actually to start to research the building where we were sitting and to make a research into it, to know about the story. We knew that we got the house because Daniela Pasal, a Jewish artist from Poland, she left it to make an art center. But what happened before, we didn't know. So we started an investigation and we realized that was the house of a former Palestinian scholar living in Egypt. And we started to make a research in Ankara, in the house, and trying to connect the situation of today in Ankara with the past and with the present. And we understood that what we want to do is to create a new museum, a museum that actually, in a way, has a type of dialogue also with the biggest museum here in Jerusalem, maybe in Israel, the Israel Museum, that it's not so far from that location.
Yeah, and also also the issue was Ankara, it's a very touristic place with a lot of pilgrims coming there and internal tourism. So we thought that by the moment that we create a museum and we name it as a museum, we'll have much more people entering than if it's an art center. And it was a kind of intervention in the touristic also on the touristic circuit. And it really worked. That was quite incredible. Just putting a sign that's the Museum of the Contemporary, it turned to be a museum for the people entering there.
So I think there is quite a lot of similarities with the Jewish Museum in Montreal, that is a very conceptual museum as well. Here, the concept is more dealing with what is the contemporary. So this idea of contemporary allowed us to actually to approach many different topics from different ways. But as part of this ideological establishment of this museum, we were relating to the Israel Museum. And so the Israel Museum is actually designed as a type of monument to a Palestinian village. Mansfeld, the architect, was actually watching the village of Malcha in order to create the new Israel Museum. And you want to read it?
So if according to Mansfeld architectural plan, the Israel Museum structure was inspired by an Arab village and built on the ruins of the village Sheikh Badr, And the MOF, the Museum of the Contemporary, is in itself an Arab house located in a village that had turned into a memorial museum of an Arab village. It follows that the Israel Museum is a souvenir of the Museum of the Contemporary.
So this type of dialogue with the Israel Museum, that actually they were not really aware of the dialogue. We were actually having this dialogue or proposing that dialogue that, and relating to the museum was happening. And with the years, it will become actually actual dialogue, but we will not enter into that. So this is the house in Ankara, because the house, when Daniela Passal got it, it was not finished. It was planned to be a house, but it was not used as a house by Issa Manoun. You see how it's related in a way, Ein Karem, to the architectural design of the Israel Museum. So Ein Karem in itself becomes a museum. It's a museum of a former Palestinian village in a way, but not as the Israel Museum is, but as a type of more living museum, but inhabited by another population. So one of the works we did was actually to paint those numbers in the entire house outside, relating to different topics. When you see these numbers in Jerusalem in the stones, you know that the house is going to be demolished and only the facade is going to be kept. So when you see that, you know that the content is going to be changed. And you want
yeah,
to...
and so it was dealing also with the history of the house, that its content changed from being the house of Issa Manoun to being Daniela Passal's house to being the art center. And also we knew at that moment when we did this work that we will have to move.
No, we didn't know yet.
Yeah, we
No, we didn't know.
Are you sure?
No,
But I
no.
think that, okay, we tell the story differently here. So, so there was that we didn't know, but yeah, it was a kind of a menace about the house. So what if something can happen to this house? And it was also dealing with the issue that keeping Ein Karem, you know, in this kind of keeping the architecture is something that it's very important for part of the population, but also we were dealing with that. It was important for the Jewish population to keep the Palestinian architecture, but not to deal with the Palestinian past of the village.
So this is another picture of the same work. Another work we did is this wonderful balcony that has a very nice view that you cannot really appreciate here. We closed the entire balcony with these plastic shutters, and if you put like three
I just will say that those plastic shutters are very like symbolizing a kind of a Tel Aviv modern Hebrew architecture. So we close it, and you could put in a jackbox like 3 shekel, and you will see what happened.
So what actually we were doing, we were selling the view of the landscape for 3 shekel, 8 seconds for 3 shekel. And it was relating also to the gentrification that Ein Karem was suffering, the changes that were more actually contemporary, but also dealing with the history of that specific.
Hi everyone, this is Pippa. I think Diego and Lea are just a little frozen, so we'll give them a few minutes to rejoin, as I'm sure you're all familiar with coming in and out of Zoom chats.
Just while we're waiting, Nora, I can answer your question for you that you posted in the chat. So we have collaborated with Sala-Manca before, but only to host them for a talk, not on a larger bespoke project. So their approach to museology pre-existed our collaboration, which happened, I believe, about 1.5 years ago, and focused on one of their projects called The Eternal Sukkot.
I believe I just let Diego back in. So
yeah, we are really sorry.
It's never happened to us, so but yeah, there is always a first time.
But anyway, thanks for your patience.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So we'll continue from the moment we were saying we are talking
yeah,
about. Yeah.
you should imagine what happened during this period of time, but that's for another talk. And so I will go fast. Another part of this project was the creation of the Church of Criticism that is dealing with the situation of with the fact that in Ankara there are 4 churches, one of the most important places of pilgrimage in Christianity. So create a new church where we were performing. This is part of the performance.
That's what we were saying, that we were the guards of the museum.
Okay, yeah, and
Yeah.
you want to say that?
Yes, so we were also the guards. Really, every time that people would enter, would see us as the guards. So it also was very interesting. We deal a lot with also the people around the art creation, right? You know, the guards, the guides, the cleaners. And we were like suddenly going into the church and performing what we call the Passion by Joao Delgado.
That was dealing with the history of the house. And but anyway, we are going fast in order to get to the more contemporary topics that we were dealing with. We create also an audio tour that was actually telling the story of the same spot in Ankara by 3 different voices. One, the story of the house by a Palestinian voice, one by the Jewish leader of a youth village in the 4951 that was based there, and another voice of a Jewish.
Another voice
tourist,
was a tourist guide. It's like a very main tourist guide. So the idea was to give like different voices and also to allow people from the neighborhood that are living now there to listen also to the Palestinian history of the place and trying to start talking about that. That was what we tried to do when we've been in Ankara.
The idea is that actually you can hear all the narratives, so you can select the narratives that you want to hear. You have the freedom to select your own narrative, but you have all the narratives actually there to select.
Or to listen to all of them. Yeah. So and the other, because it was the Museum of the Contemporary, and so a museum in Jordan has a collection. So we wanted to create the collection of the museum, and we created the storage room. That the idea was to have a collection that would be open for everybody, and would be like a free platform.
It's an alternative circuit to the actually to sharing of art collections. The idea that are curatorial projects curated by curators, but are possible to download those exhibitions, not to watch it on the internet. You can download and install it in your own space according to your own possibilities, economic possibilities. So if you have like the pictures, you can print it in your printer. If you are in the most far place in the smallest city, I don't know where, so you do it and you install this exhibition in your own space according to your own possibilities. So in that way, different exhibitions can be curated, upload and download everywhere without any cost, having a type of alternative circuit for art sharing.
And also the idea was to have this double curation, in terms that there is the curator that had created the exhibition and uploaded that, of course with the permit of the artist to share the work in that way, and the artist knowing that their work can be installed in different ways. They could also say, those are my boundaries in terms of what I allow my work to be, and the curator that will install the exhibition, as Diego said, according to economical possibilities, the space, or whatever, also adaptations that she or he or they would feel that are important for the presentation of that show in that specific place.
So we continue with many other projects, but we are not going to go through that because it is, we want to talk about what we were doing during the pandemic, but that was for us an important background, because if not, it's hard to understand. So now we are going to share with you.
Just about the storage room, the idea, I think it's important, it's about this kind of democratization of art, or trying to think about what happens to an exhibition that it's installed once, and after that, how this can be also travel in different ways and in a more like free in terms of possibility of different places that perhaps they don't have the possibility to produce their own exhibitions, but they want to do like have access to interesting materials. So that was the idea of the storage room. Instead of a closed storage room in a museum, how a storage room can be something that other people can have the possibility to.
So I think that if you have questions till now, or you want to comment or have a question, I think it can be a good moment before we pass to the next COVID-19 project we did. If there are questions.
I'm not seeing any further questions in the chat, but if anyone would like to ask a question, feel free to pop it in the chat. We can unmute you.
Okay. So when things start to be quite closed here due to the pandemic, so we felt also there was this issue of being closed at home and people not understanding what's happening on one sense, and on the other sense, quite still difficult political issues happening here in terms of the government, of Netanyahu, of the prime minister, etc. And we felt that people somehow are like paralyzed, and we wanted to try to, again, to engage people into action and to think how we can again create this kind of platform for meeting and for working together, even that each of us is in different places in their houses.
So what happens is that actually we had the same feeling that we had during the second Intifada, when we have started all our work with these art events and with the journal. So suddenly, after 7 years, after we decided actually to stop that project, we thought that it's the time to go back and to meet the people and to create a new community and to actually bring the network to connect together. And also in an alternative way, without support, and trying to check what are the possibilities that we have in these very limited conditions. So
So for us, the space was really the internet and the different platforms that people could work and experiment with them. And also the time was this very start of the pandemic and this kind of chaotic situation at that moment. So we'll read just a bit from the curatorial statement. In these days in which a virus is defined as terrorist and all become...
That's what Netanyahu said here.
That the virus is terrorist. So in which a virus is defined as terrorist and we all become rhetorical and practical potential terrorists, we seek to create a different discourse, a new platform, and a new and alternative hope through common action. EARA 13 is also an independent response to the decision of the Minister of Culture from the 17th of March to invest 8 million shekel in a digital platform instead of to support artists. EARA 13 comes to offer a conversational space that forms, imagines, and creates a rhetoric, visual, and ideological alternative to which the government offers us. This platform will enable meeting, discussion, support, and creation of new content that responds to current reality.
So what we did was actually to create, before the event, the possibility for the artists to meet between them, to have a space where we can actually connect, comment, and react to what we were, all of us, suffering for, or thinking how to react without knowing where all this is going or is bringing us. So we have a couple of meetings through Zoom, and we were talking about our idea. A lot of people joined us and wanted to take part, and they sent some proposals, and actually it became an art event where each one actually used his own platform, and they were all connected through one website that we created, and people were actually able to watch the works that were all of them as our events compressed in a very short period of time, and it was performative in its essence. And one of the most important things is that it was a place for meeting and being together, knowing that it's going actually to end soon.
Yes, so for us also the art events that we did in physical spaces, instead of like making them in a couple of days, for example, also this event for us is important, this idea of having a very specific time. We know that people will miss some of the works, but that's part of it. It's this idea of like, you know, going from one work to another and feeling this this feeling that something is happening, that there is this energy of different works and different artists and public together.
And so we're going to show a little bit some of the works to have a feeling of what has been done. It's not the same because the most important thing is not there. That is actually this real time. So this is Matvey Shapiro. He was actually, we were we didn't have the possibility to go and run outside. I don't know if I'm sharing sound, but it's not important here. Actually, it is important because it's. Esto. So he connect with filters to his how do you call it, the
running machine.
The running machine, and he was actually playing through running a composition in his own house. Another work.
Also, each artist like chose different kind of works and platforms. There were some works like were like a closed guide and workshop dealing with the idea of the museum that Ofrikna needed. And also there was a work that was kind of personal meeting that she invited people to meet with her and to think about this idea of solitude and being alone. So each of them, there were some works that were in Instagram or in Telegram, and some of them in Zoom or in Facebook Live.
Another work was by Nomia Vilovich using Instagram. She was actually cooking every day another cookie with another text. That was actually her reaction to her being at home. Another work was done by Noah Arad.
So what she did was like putting those sculptures that were very realistic and were of faces in different places around her house, but also crossing and passing those 100 meters. And she was like streaming live. Now this is the documentation.
Yeah, another work is Judith Schlossberg. So the family, Judith and her family, were actually having this moon that you can actually inflate. How do you say? And it's a moon that you can use it as as your own moon. And they had it in the surrounding of their place where they were living, and they have a type of family ritual. They were actually entering the moon and having a dinner there inside, and another actress were actually improvising and talking about all those feelings in this situation of isolation that we were living at those days. So we are still living.
And also this moon, this structure, it also relates somehow to some different like architectural plans during the 60s of doing other kind of alternative living to this bourgeois house, that as we know it, and trying to find this kind of structure that it's also more related to the outside, and it's not closing us, isolating us inside these walls of I will not say classical home, but of this kind of American suburban house. Yeah.
And this work done by Avner Pinchover was a more provocative work, actually by Zoom, that he was actually spitting to the camera, and this work actually had a lot of different meanings or interpretation at that time, because actually to spit was actually a way of attack and create, to pass the virus. And it was what was being happening here in some places, in some confrontations between different populations. So people were or spitting the police or spitting other groups, and he was actually spitting the public. And what was actually quite strong with this work is that suddenly one of the persons watching this work was spitting to him as well. So suddenly this, suddenly this distance was absolutely actually blurred and erased, so that's
and also the physical, like this kind of material feeling of the spitting in the camera, even that that it cannot really pass. So it was very effective in that sense as well.
Justo estamos nosotros. Okay.
So there were different performance works that were, as I said, they were live and dealing with the different issues. Someone with family and isolation, and this, and some of them like outside, as we showed, and some of them were more collaborative, like the Great Gehenna Choir, that they are a very experimental and a very impressive choir that they work also at Mamuta Art Centre, trying to check the possibilities of the Zoom and how they can work as a choir while being in different places.
And one of those, they had 3 performances. This is the last one, and we will show a little bit. Actually, I just want to show you at the beginning, it's only the members of the choir. And what happens later is that they decided to open to all the public and to be part of this performance. But in Zoom, you cannot actually sing together. So in a way, it was a recording, and all the people were actually, they were not really singing together. But all of us watching, we had the feeling that we are part of this community singing together. And at the end, when they opened the cameras, and you can see also our family, suddenly everyone in his own house were singing together. That was actually that was the end of the event, and was very strong and very.
Yeah, I just want to say that the letter of the song it's today I will dream your dreams and you will dream my dreams, and after that we'll exchange. And so it was very beautiful, and again they built it very beautifully because they start at the beginning like solos, each member, and after that together, and after that they open to the public. And being alone, each of us in our houses, well, we are a family, but it was, for the people, was very, very touching and extremely moving. And they said also, as artists, and all of the artists that took place, that was very strong, that this kind of, now we have the performance and they really feel they perform and the house is the stage, and suddenly it finished and it's again they are alone in their house. So this, you know,
un poco y con eso cerramos?
Yeah, I will just read some comments that we had for the event,
and we close with that.
You know, curator, that she said, you have made an extraordinary event in its warmth and humanity. It felt that since the closure, I was experiencing for the first time an event that felt like real in a space rather than clinging to the screen. Thank you so much. And other people from the municipality said, a new domain has been established by Sala-Manca. The Sala-Manca people are visionaries and pioneers in art in
this new space, actually, new location.
Yeah, in this public domain. And also
an art critic.
An art critic, he wrote, I was pretty amazed at what I could see. Actually, I didn't believe it could have the same effect as it did in the past, but I was quite surprised. I could really feel a Ara event, that was the events we did in the past. It was a strange feeling, like an underworld in a dimension or other sphere.
So that's our talk for today. Very concentrated, no?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So again, I think that again, this event was a response, as the other events and other platforms, to something that we feel that's happening around us, and we feel that we want to respond to it, and respond to it in a way that we can create a community or a network that also for us and also for other people in general, we can think about all those platforms we have been doing. That was the main objective. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing all that with us. I think we can open it up to some of the participants. If anyone has any questions, feel free to either type your questions in the chat or raise your hand and we can unmute you.
Yeah, Nora, I see you have a question.
Yes, hello, thank you very much to you, and thank you to the Museum of Jewish Montreal. The last performance you presented to us joined some of my wonderings about what you talked about earlier in the talk, about the question between public and private space, and Zoom raises a lot of question about it, because suddenly you're in my garden, and it's you and also I saw on your performance some of the participants shows the option to mask with a picture the background of the room, so there is still the possibility to choose to block the camera, to hide the background, or to be totally open and to invite you in my terrace. My roommates are around and stuff like this. And I was wondering if you thought, if it's also a path of reflection for you in your practice and creation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. ¿Quieres contestar?
Yeah.
I think I understood the reference. I didn't understand the question itself. What did you ask at the end? Because I didn't hear well.
I'm sorry. It's with this last performance. Did you start again to think about the question around public and private space, as you did when you, at the beginning of your art center, when you started the workshop at your own place.
Thank you. We deal a lot with that questions. Actually, the choir was, was their work. We were just a curator, so the decision was taken by the choir. But for example, in our own work, we deal a lot with that. We did a series of telenovela that it's like, like a soap opera. We did only two chapters. We are working on the third one. It's a slow telenovela. It's one chapter every 7 years. So the second chapter, it's like an anti-telenovela. The second chapter was actually screened only at our own place, at our house. And people were coming to watch with us in our TV the chapter of the telenovela when we were also the actors staying and sitting with them in our own house. But the question of the private place that you are actually sharing or not sharing, it's an amazing question, because I don't know, it's an access to a lot of information in those small pieces of background that we have, and we also can understand and learn so much about the people just from this, also from those that decide not to show. And that's, everything is perfect because you have the freedom, I think, to participate in the way you want to, and you are allowed to participate in any way. So I think it's always a question that we are dealing with and thinking of. And I think in Canada, we were last year in Canada for a year, but all that situation and question of house for us, it's very different culture than in Montreal. We were in Ontario, but of people inviting people in the house is very different than the tradition here in Israel. So all these questions, with assume, I think that it's a very interesting cultural question about how you are opening there and we are opening here or not opening. No, Lea, if you...
Yeah, absolutely. And also, again, this idea that the house turns into a stage, and at the moment that you open the camera, and especially if you know that you are giving a talk or you're performing, and how it's absolutely, yeah, it's very, very interesting. And it's also can be very problematic if it's badly used, because of the information, as Diego said, that we are releasing at the moment that we put the camera inside our house. So yes, this is absolutely very, very interesting. And it's also very interesting to see what happens now, here that we are almost coming back to normal right now. And what happened with what happened with the people, and again, the Zoom or the digital, it's like, some weeks ago it was much more like everybody was like looking for events, and now it's leaving that. And yeah, there are interesting questions also in teaching, to teach through Zoom, that at the beginning it was like everybody felt terrible about that, but you can find also some interesting things that might happen. So yeah, all those relations are about the private and the public are very, yeah. I don't know if it answered your question.
Is there anyone else have a question that they would like to ask? You can also feel free to type it in the chat, and we can direct it to Diego and Lea for you. Okay, Alyssa.
I'll ask a question. So I think it's really interesting what you were talking about with this like blending of the public and private. And it sounds like even before we all kind of migrated into the digital space as a response to the pandemic, you were already exploring a lot of things that I think more people are now thinking about, like that public and private space merging, or creating community around art where there's more discourse as opposed to like the traditional museum that you would just go to and see something. And I'm curious to know, especially as you were saying that things where you are getting a little more back to normal, I can say in Montreal, we're not there yet. Do you think that that focus on blending or exploring the space between public and private, or traditional museums and more discourse-based museums, or even center and peripheries, will get carried into more of the post-COVID or later stage lockdown cultural questions and ways of practice?
I think that yes, that people are, especially in terms of museums and galleries, there is this thought about having a more hybrid situation between the online and the physical, especially because we don't yet know how this will continue and if we'll come back to a kind of closure, and also with older people, how much they will be willing to go out, and how they will be willing to have like a cultural content coming to their houses. Personally, I'm very I'm all the time now thinking about how through the art and what we are doing at the art center, we can think about not coming back to normal, in sense of we don't want to come back to normal. The normal was not what we all are willing to have. So that's the question that I'm dealing with, not just how to come back and do things that will, okay, people can reach or not reach, but what do I have to do as an art center to help a discussion or to help a kind of thinking about we are not supposed to come back to normal. There was something that opened during the disclosure and the pandemic with all the problematic of it, but how we take that in order to make a step to another kind of system, and in terms of our relationship also with nature and our relation with work. Now it's crazy what's happening here in the last 3 days. We cannot stop for a second. It's crazy. People are again like, just now they have to do things and I have to again to stop just a second. Let's think. Let's try to see what's happening around. Let's try to fix what's wrong. Let's try to help the people that they had a very terrible economic situation now, and we have to think about all the system. No, it's so that's what I'm like dealing with, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good answer. Erica Lea has a question for you, so I'll unmute her.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do work, and I've been thinking around sort of museums and thinking more about kind of established or establishment museums. And in some ways also this has parallels to universities, which is where I'm situated. There's been like this kind of growing push in the last, I don't know exactly how long, number of years, let's say, to go online, to go digital, because, that's what all the kids are doing. And that's how you kind of, remain current. But, that's been very much a push. It's been very sort of strategic and from the center out to the periphery. Like, so here we have our highlights. How do we get them out there? So like, all the blockbuster stuff can go out. But one thing that I've been wondering about, and actually my colleague, Shelley Butler, and I just wrote like a little blog for the American Association for Museums about this, about thinking like, while museums are closed in this kind of state of exception moment, how can we use that to think about how all of this virtual activity can be used for critical purposes rather than just for kind of essentially promotional purposes. So like how can we rethink? And I'm just wondering, and this is maybe a question for Diego and Lea, for having done so much kind of critical virtual work, rather than thinking in this top-down way, even though what you guys do is so amazing and thoughtful, but like, it's from the center, we get an idea and then we put it out there. But in a sense, all the exclusions and silences in regular, established museums have to do with all the people out there who don't have access to, or don't feel welcome in, or whose voices are not presented in museums or these spaces. So how can we use this moment and use the kind of digital and the virtual to somehow, have it be bi-directional and rather have the impulse come from outside. So what do people out there who may suddenly feel an ability to engage with, quote, the museum or whatever the institution is, what do they want actually? Like, what do they need? What would they like? And how might this enable them to get more of that, whether it's that they want more to get in to the institutions or whether they want something from the institutions to come to them. So the question for Diego and Lea is, like, in all of what you've done, have you, aside from getting these wonderful, like, expressions of thanks from people, have you gotten any requests from people about, like, hey, well, now that we have your ear, can you do X, or we would like Y, you know, like that kind of thing?
What do you think? A ver, empezar yo.
No, it's difficult for me to think in that way, in sense of I would relate to it more in my daily work in Mamuta than in this period of like 2 months working digitally. I do have this kind of dialogue and conversations either when we have done different projects in different neighborhoods in Jerusalem with mobile projects that we have been doing, or with people coming into the art center that they were not, perhaps they didn't know where they are coming to, and suddenly meeting what's the places and trying to, like, as you said, like saying, but why it's not this happening, or it's not, and starting some conversation that they did continue, and some of them not, of course, but yes. So now in this period, there is something that perhaps it's interesting to think how to get into it, and how to propose this kind, as you said, of having more feedback from the people about what the institution can be. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So Zev, I know that you had said you had some comments as well, and Erica's just put into the chat, but Lea, you already read that part.
I'll just add a couple thoughts, and they're all emerging right now and haven't formulated into one thought yet, but it relates to what you were speaking about, Erica. One thing is this conflictual feeling right now while we're working in the culture sector and arts and heritage and all these different areas that are not necessarily essential services, so to speak. And I think for institutions like ours and so many others, you know, how do you make the argument in a moment for a lot of these types of things that were worth people's time and money and things like that? And I'm sure for artists, it's the same question. How are you worth people's time and money? And yet also we're trying to, I think every institution that's, a lot of institutions are trying to not just do the right thing, but change themselves over the last number of years to make sure that they're more bottom up and that they're addressing voices that are, you know, not like the top down voices, people of color, people with fewer means and things like that. One thing that's so obvious, I think, in a lot of places where COVID-19 is hit is the people that are getting worst hit from this are the, you know, either the elderly or the very poor who have to work in quote unquote essential services. Those people probably, I shouldn't say those people, but many of the people who are working in those areas may not have as much time for the bottom up helping out a museum right now. Now that's just one thought. A separate thought that I just heard yesterday speaking to someone from an art center here in Montreal is that they're doing a lot of, they're contacting all of their 70-year-old plus members and followers and just calling them right now to just, it's like a totally new function of their institution. They're literally providing a social service. A lot of these people, their children don't live in the same city. They're even doing grocery deliveries to some of their members now. And that's an arts institution. So I'm guessing there are are similar things going on at galleries and arts institutions around the world right now. I mean, we're in such a weird time, but it just may give a hint of where things are today.
I'm just gonna unmute you, Erica, so that you can maybe give your response that you wrote in the chat for everyone.
Sorry, now I'm all like typing everything.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify, Zev. I mean, in some way, yeah, that, because I've been reading these trillions of expressions from museum practitioners and people who, of course, it's all terrible. So many people are losing their jobs. I mean, in the museum sector as well, and all the ravaging that's happening there. But sort of like, how do we be essential? Are we actually essential? What does it mean to be essential and stuff? And in a way, I mean, this is the moment where, I mean, I've been thinking about this as a scholar, and I think museums could think about this as a museum. It's like, this is the moment, like our work, someone said this in a wonderful, I don't know, one of the articles in some publication I read recently about our work is the world, right? And so if what is happening right now is not our work, then what are we, right? So in a sense, obviously there's this tension between like, oh, as a culture worker or as a thinker or whatever, like I feel so useless, and I've been trying to find ways to volunteer and like, help people with concrete things, like I've been cooking and delivering things and whatever. But on the other hand, we have expertise that we should be able to make relevant to the world as it actually is. And if we can't, I think that throws grave questions into what we actually exist for in peacetime, right? So yeah, I think it's the question of like, if we feel we're not essential, how do we actually make ourselves essential? That's the question for me.
I'll add in one other thought, and then I'll let other people speak. But I think there will be, a big thing for every museum or culture institution is to ask questions and to help people ask questions about the world around them, and hopefully open up new lines of discussion that will change society. I don't know if we are an immediate essential service. It's true, we're not a hospital. Museums are not, and other cultural institutions are not. We provide a lot of meaning that helps us get through these times. But hopefully we can all be around for the end of the pandemic, or as it tempers down, and to be there, to be the forum for reconstituting what society is going to be looking like, because obviously a lot of holes have been further exacerbated through the COVID-19. And I think artists have a role right now to start asking that. It's like, it's really going to come up from the bottom with individual artists asking these questions and pinpointing them to people. Institutions may take longer to adjust towards that. I could be wrong though. Maybe I'm actually too conservative in my thinking about this at this moment. But yeah, something I'm grappling with.
I mean, maybe I'll just say one quick final thing, since I see I have not yet been muted. I just wanted to say, yeah, I mean, this is something I think with some tension about all the time as well. But, I don't know, in a crisis moment, it's like we do meaning making. That's our specialty. But we also have resources, which, in a crisis, maybe some of those can be given in just much more direct ways if that's what people need. It's kind of like breaking Shabbat when someone's life depends on it, right? And I typed in the chat, like the big library in Montreal opened its main hall to homeless people when it was still cold. Maybe they're still doing that. I have read about museums who have like offered their spaces or their parking lots for immediate needs. So I think one can do both. And of course, I think there's this constant intertangling between meaning making and then just unfolding practical life, which then of course one has, one's forced to make meaning out of that as well. So anyway, yeah, there's no one answer, but I think something we all are struggling with. Thanks.
Some really interesting discussion. Oh, Emily, did you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I was gonna just mention there were a couple interesting comments there from in the chat here. Yeah, of archives donating gloves and art packers giving masks to hospitals. So
I just wanted to actually to add that I think that all this situation actually maybe generate those questions. But I think this is what Lea tried to say before, that is, but all the time we are living with all these questions. I think, like, you know, what is the, you know, what we as artists or as directors of an art center are we doing in general? It's not only with the COVID-19. When we were working with the, you know, with the Jahalin or the Bedouin, we are in the same situation. It's not so different than the situation now. It's like, you know, we are like, we are all the time making those questions one time after the other doing every day. It's not that COVID actually opened in questions that we didn't raise before. They raised in a different way. They made them more extreme. But all the time, you know, we are watching about also the different approach to different communities here. How also, you know, how the government is relating to the situation in different ways. So we are trying to react to those topics.
Even the opening exhibition is about, you know, for Palestinian artists that very young, that also it's not easy for them to get to
the next exhibition.
And those, for me, it's super important as well, because, you know, with this pandemic also there are some other political issues that are, you know, that they were shut. So we are raising it again. So
but about the, you know, the play, you know, for example, I you know, I was teaching about the history of theater and performance in last semester, but, you know, one of the main question was, you know, what is perform? You know, I'm taking a very simple example, but, you know, what is performance? Where I find performance, and actually and we're dealing about Brecht and about all this idea of changing or how, you know, you can have this catharsis and think about the work you are watching and actually act after that. And one of the I think most amazing thing that happened is that suddenly I heard one cleaning person singing at the university, you know, when he was cleaning the toilet. So, and I asked him if I can record him, and he say, yes, sure, and I can say some words, he asked me, and I say, yes, of course. And he was talking to the students, and he said in his speech a very, very strong statement. He said that not everyone, but some of the students look at me as someone that has not the same they have, but I do have, and I also have money, I do have work, and I can sing. And that was, and, you know, and that was, of course, part of the most important, I think that was maybe the most important lesson during that semester. Also about performance, also about the voice, also about how we look at the other. So so I'm saying that, I'm just saying that because it's not only now, it's all the time that we have to generate those questions, and we are trying actually to confront what is a museum all the time, and how the museum has to actually deconstruct itself to reconstruct in other ways, so this is why in Live It, it's hard, at least for me, I think for us, to answer that. But when we created this event, with this online event, one artist said, thanks to this event, I was able to go out from my 100 meters to my studio back after 3 weeks that I was not able to move. So
that she was paralyzed. She's like in what
yeah,
you call
it's less
risk.
related.
But
so what is clear is was not the role of the museum now. To make those virtual exhibitions is not what the museum should do. That's clear, I think, for us. But to bring
those virtual tours that everybody is like doing because they have to put something online without asking question of what they have to do now. What's the answer of what we or the museum have to do? That's more difficult, but at least to ask the answer to the question. Yeah.
I think we don't have questions. We don't have answers. Sorry, we have questions. We don't have answers. And only, I think the only answers that we can have are through the doing of the different projects. And we are actually having the answers through the doing, or no?
Or
Or
more
not?
questions.
Or more questions. Maybe we're paralyzed. So sorry, Erica and Zev, if we don't really relate to your comments. You don't hear.
I think maybe we'll wrap it up here, unless anyone has one final question or comment they want to share. But that was a really interesting discussion period. So thank you guys for engaging and participating with us. I want to give obviously a huge thank you to Diego and Lea for kicking off our new series and just for taking the time to talk to us today. That was like so interesting, super insightful. And thank you to everyone for joining us today and sticking around for the discussion. I think we're all really looking forward to exploring these topics in more depth as the series progresses. So make sure to stay tuned, check out our Facebook page. Our next event that's coming up is with Brooklyn-based multidisciplinary artist Sarah Arenthal, where we can touch on some more of these topics. I'm also gonna, relating to what we were talking about, I'm gonna put my email in the chat here in case anyone has proposals for future for future events in this series. We really want to keep you guys coming back and continue our digital programming. So we really want to hear from you. So I'm putting my email here. You can all see it there. And finally, you know, if anyone is interested in supporting the museum and the future of our digital programming, I will put the link to our museum's support page in the chat as well. And any donation at this time would be greatly appreciated so we can keep things going for you. And yeah, a big thank you once again to Lea and Diego and everyone for joining us today.
Thank you very
so much. Have a great evening for everyone and an afternoon for everyone in Montreal. Thank you.